The energy blade hummed 3 inches from her throat. Dr. Sarah Chen kept her eyes open, refusing to give the Xylothian executioner the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. Around her, the crystalline walls of the throne chamber pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, the alien equivalent of a courtroom gallery murmuring in anticipation. She had 20 seconds left according to her internal count. 20 seconds before the blade would complete its ceremonial descent and separate her head from her body. The Xylothian Empire didn't believe in quick deaths for treaty violators. They believed in spectacle. Sarah's hands were bound behind her back with neural suppressors that sent jolts of pain through her nervous system every few seconds. Her uniform hung in tatters, stained with purple Xylothian blood from the fight that had gotten her captured. She had killed 3 Imperial guards before they'd overwhelmed her. Not because she wanted to. Because the screaming in the medical wing had become unbearable. The child had been dying. A human child, barely 6 years old, caught in the crossfire when the colony transport was attacked. The Xylothians had taken survivors as leverage. Their medical technology could have saved little Emma Patterson in minutes. But the treaty forbade interference with lesser species. The treaty said humans would handle their own casualties. The treaty said a lot of things that meant nothing when you watched a child suffocate on her own blood. Sarah had broken into the medical wing. Had stolen the regeneration serum. Had injected Emma herself while alarms screamed through the compound. The child had gasped, coughed, and started breathing normally again. 3 seconds later, the guards had burst through the door. Now Emma was alive somewhere in the compound. And Sarah was going to die for it. The human demonstrates typical species arrogance. The executioner's voice came through a translation collar, turning his clicking mandibles into flat, emotionless words. You violated sacred law. You contaminated our medical supplies. You killed our warriors. I saved a child, Sarah said quietly. Her voice didn't shake. She'd made her choice. She'd known the consequences. You broke the treaty your government signed. You doomed your entire colony to retribution. For one small human who would have died regardless. Sarah met his compound eyes. They were beautiful in their own way, multifaceted gems that reflected the chamber's light in kaleidoscope patterns. Beautiful and utterly inhuman. Yes, she said. I would do it again. The executioner tilted his head. The gesture looked almost curious. Then, he raised the energy blade higher, preparing for the killing stroke. Stop. The word wasn't shouted. It was barely spoken at all. But every Xylothian in the chamber froze instantly. Sarah felt the change in air pressure before she understood what was happening. The crowd parted. Guards who had stood like statues suddenly knelt. Queen Xylethra entered the execution chamber. Sarah had never seen her before. Few humans had. The Xylothian queen was 3 meters tall, her exoskeleton decorated with bioluminescent patterns that marked centuries of rule. She moved with fluid grace despite her size, her 6 limbs carrying her forward with predatory precision. Behind her, members of the royal guard followed in perfect formation, silent, disciplined, their weapons held at parade rest despite the violence that had occurred here. The queen stopped 10 meters from Sarah. This close, her presence was overwhelming. Pheromones filled the air, chemical signals Sarah's human brain couldn't fully process, but her hindbrain understood. Danger. Power. Absolute authority. I will see what happened, the queen said. Her translation collar rendered her voice with eerie clarity. I will see through your eyes. Sarah felt her blood turn cold. Xylothian memory extraction was legal under extreme circumstances. It was also irreversible. The process would burn out her neural pathways while copying her memories directly into Xylothian biostorage. She would die. Not from the blade, from having her mind literally pulled apart and examined. But she would die anyway. And at least this way, maybe the queen would understand. Yes, Sarah said. The queen gestured. 2 technicians approached with a device Sarah recognized from intelligence briefings, a neural interface crown, delicate as spider silk and absolutely lethal. They placed it on her head with ceremonial care. Sarah felt the tendrils seeking her temples, her occipital lobe, the base of her skull. The pain was immediate and excruciating. "Show me," the Queen commanded. "Show me why you chose death." Sarah closed her eyes. The interface activated. Her memories began to stream outward, pulled from her consciousness like thread from a spool. She felt herself fragmenting, her sense of self beginning to dissolve. The last thing she remembered thinking was Emma's face when she'd started breathing again. That moment of pure relief when death had retreated. That had been worth it. Whatever came next, that had been worth everything. Then, the memories took her, and Sarah Chin fell into darkness. The Queen's consciousness expanded to encompass the human's final hours. The Xylothian neural interface technology was ancient, refined over millennia. It didn't just copy memories, it allowed the viewer to experience them with nearly perfect fidelity. The Queen felt Sarah's exhaustion from 3 sleepless nights coordinating medical supplies in the colony. Felt her frustration with the bureaucratic delays in the treaty implementation. Felt her desperate, clawing hope that somehow they could save everyone despite impossible odds. Then, the transport attack. The Queen experienced it through Sarah's eyes, the explosion that tore through the civilian vessel, the screaming chaos as Xylothian pirates boarded looking for hostages, the desperate evacuation where mothers threw their children toward the escape pods and not all of them made it. The Queen felt Sarah's hands shaking as she performed triage in the landing bay. Felt her making decisions no one should have to make. This one lives. This one dies. This one might survive if we get help soon enough. Emma Patterson had been Category Red. Critical. Minutes to live without intervention. Sarah had carried the child to the Xylothian medical wing herself. Had begged the guards for help. The Queen experienced the conversation exactly as Sarah had lived it. "Please! She's dying. You have the regeneration serum. Just 1 dose. Please! The treaty forbids interference. Your government insisted on these terms. We honor agreements. She's 6 years old. She's bleeding out. Just let me leave, human. This is not your facility." The Queen felt Sarah's helplessness transform into rage. Felt the exact moment when something inside the human doctor broke and was reforged into something harder. The Queen watched through Sarah's memory as she returned to the colony medical station, as she planned the break-in for 2 hours, as she studied guard rotations and security protocols with the same methodical precision she applied to surgery. The infiltration had been skilled. Sarah wasn't a soldier, but she was desperate and intelligent. She'd bypassed 3 security checkpoints using stolen access codes. She'd navigated the medical wing's storage area by memory from her previous authorized visits. She'd found the regeneration serum in a secure cabinet and cracked it open with a plasma cutter stolen from maintenance. Then, she'd carried the serum back to where Emma lay dying in the human medical bay. The Queen experienced the injection, Sarah's hands steady despite her racing heartbeat, her voice calm as she told the unconscious child everything would be all right, the surge of relief when Emma's vitals stabilized and her breathing eased. 3 seconds of relief before the guards arrived. The Queen felt every moment of the fight that followed. Sarah hadn't wanted to kill anyone. But the guards had tried to confiscate the half-empty regeneration vial. Had tried to reverse the treatment to preserve treaty law. Sarah had fought not for her own life but to prevent them from reaching Emma. She'd killed 3 warriors with their own weapons. The Queen felt no satisfaction in those deaths, only grim determination. Only the desperate arithmetic of trying to buy enough time for the serum to fully integrate into Emma's system so it couldn't be reversed. When they'd finally overwhelmed her, Sarah's last conscious thought before the neural suppressors activated had been, 10 minutes. The serum needs 10 minutes to bond. Just stay down, Emma. Just keep breathing. The memory stream ended. The Queen found herself back in her own consciousness, standing in the execution chamber. Around her, the court waited in absolute silence. The technicians removed the neural interface crown from Sarah's head. The human doctor slumped forward, unconscious but alive. The memory extraction had been stopped before reaching the lethal threshold. The Queen had stopped it herself. She stood motionless, processing what she had witnessed. The Xylothian Empire had ruled the sector for 3,000 years. They had seen countless species rise and fall. They had encountered warriors, diplomats, scientists, artists. They had categorized humanity as a promising but ultimately mediocre species, clever with technology but lacking the discipline for true greatness. The Queen had just watched a human choose certain death to save a single child of her species. Not her own offspring. Not even a relative. Just a child who happened to need help. The mathematics of it defied Xylothian logic. One life exchange for another of equal status produced zero net benefit to the species. Sarah had possessed valuable skills, medical training that took decades to acquire, leadership qualities, genetic material worth preserving. Emma Patterson was a juvenile with no established value. The rational choice was to let the inferior specimen expire and preserve the superior one. Sarah had made the irrational choice. Had made it without hesitation. Had made it knowing exactly what it would cost. The Queen turned to her Royal Guard commander. "Bring the child Emma Patterson to me. Now." The commander's antennae flicked in surprise, but he didn't question the order. He gestured to two guards who departed immediately. The Queen turned her attention to the executioner who still stood frozen with his energy blade raised. "You are dismissed," she said quietly. "The execution is suspended." The executioner lowered his weapon and backed away. The Queen could sense confusion rippling through the assembled court. She ignored it. Her mind was working through implications that reached far beyond this single incident. The human had broken sacred law. That was indisputable. But the human had broken it for reasons that suggested humans operated on fundamentally different ethical calculations than the Xylothian Empire had understood. The treaty had been negotiated with human diplomats who spoke the language of strategic advantage and mutual benefit. The Queen had assumed those diplomats represented typical human thinking. Sarah Chin suggested something else entirely. 5 minutes passed. The court remained silent. No one dared speak when the Queen was processing a decision. Finally, the guards returned with Emma Patterson. The child looked small and terrified between the two massive Xylothian warriors. Her eyes were red from crying. She wore a medical gown several sizes too large. But she was breathing normally, walking on her own, alive. The Queen knelt down to bring herself closer to the child's eye level. Emma flinched backward, but the guard steadied her gently. "Do you know who I am?" the Queen asked. Emma nodded, her voice barely a whisper. The Queen. "Do you know what Dr. Chin did for you?" Another nod. Tears started flowing down Emma's face. "She saved me. But they said she's going to die because of it. Because of me." The Queen felt something unusual stirring in her consciousness. Xylothians didn't experience emotion the way humans did. Their neural architecture was fundamentally different. But they did understand value. They understood significance. And there was something significant about the way this small human child was willing to face the Queen herself despite obvious terror. "Dr. Chin broke our laws," the Queen said carefully. "She stole from us. She killed our warriors. These are crimes that demand punishment." Emma's face crumpled. Her whole body shook with sobs. But she didn't look away. "I know," she said. "But please don't kill her. Please. She was just trying to help me. I didn't want anyone to die." "I didn't want." The child's voice broke. She was 6 years old and carrying guilt no child should bear. The Queen found herself recalculating. The treaty had been designed to keep humans in their place, to establish clear boundaries and enforce Xylothian superiority. But what good was a treaty that produced situations like this? What strategic advantage came from executing a doctor for saving a child? The Queen stood. She turned to face her court. "I have reviewed the human's memories directly. I have seen her reasoning. I declare this matter requires new judgment." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Queen raised one limb for silence and received it instantly. The human Sarah Chin violated treaty law. This is confirmed. However, she violated it under circumstances the treaty did not anticipate. She acted to preserve life when our own laws created death. This suggests our understanding of human behavior was incomplete. The Queen gestured toward Emma. This child represents future human potential. The Doctor represents current human capability. Both possess value that execution would waste. I am revising my judgment. The chief diplomat stepped forward, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Your Majesty, the treaty demands, the treaty is a tool, not a master, the Queen said. Her voice carried absolute authority. I ruled this empire. I negotiated that treaty. And I can modify its interpretation when circumstances warrant. This is such a circumstance. She turned to where Sarah still lay unconscious. Dr. Sarah Chin will not be executed. Instead, she will be remanded to human custody with the requirement that she serve as medical liaison between our species. She will teach us about human decision-making processes that our negotiators failed to understand. She will help us revise the treaty to prevent similar situations in the future. The Queen paused, letting her words sink in. The child Emma Patterson will return to her colony. The regeneration serum she received will stand. No retribution will fall on the human settlement. This is my decree. Silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, the assembled Xylothians began the ritual gesture of acceptance, lowering their heads and crossing their primary limbs. The Queen's word was law. The Queen's judgment was final. Emma looked up at the Queen with wide eyes. She's going to live. Dr. Chin is going to live. Yes, the Queen said. Because of what she was willing to sacrifice for you. And what you were willing to face for her. The Queen gestured to her personal physician. Revive the human doctor. Carefully. Her neural pathways have been stressed but not destroyed. She will recover fully. As the physician moved to comply, the Queen remained still, her mind already racing through the implications of this decision. The other human colonies would hear about this. The treaty renegotiations would be complex. Some members of her court would question her judgment. But the Queen had not maintained power for 2 centuries by making safe choices. She had maintained it by recognizing when old assumptions needed to be discarded. Humanity had just taught her something the Xylothian Empire needed to learn. Sometimes the irrational choice was the right choice. Sometimes preserving a single life mattered more than preserving protocol. Sometimes mercy was stronger than law. Sarah Chin opened her eyes to find herself lying on the chamber floor with a Xylothian physician scanning her with diagnostic equipment. Her head felt like someone had taken it apart and reassembled it incorrectly. Every thought came slowly, pushing through a fog of neural disruption. But she was alive. She was impossibly, inexplicably alive. The Queen's face appeared in her field of vision. Those compound eyes, still beautiful and still inhuman, but something in their depths had changed. Sarah tried to speak, but her voice wouldn't cooperate. Rest, the Queen said. You will recover. And then we will talk about what your species truly values. Because clearly I have much to learn. Sarah's last conscious thought before exhaustion claimed her was simple and profound. Emma was alive. She was alive. And somehow, impossibly, the universe had decided that mattered. The Queen watched as her guards carefully transported Sarah to the medical wing, the same wing the human had broken into hours earlier. The irony wasn't lost on her. She turned to find Emma still standing there, small and lost and holding back tears. Come here, child, the Queen said gently. Emma approached slowly. The Queen extended her smallest limb, the one used for delicate work. Emma hesitated, then placed her tiny hand against it. The scale difference was absurd. The Queen's limb was larger than the child's entire arm. What Dr. Chin did was not rational by my species' standards, the Queen said. But it was brave. And it was kind. Those are not qualities I understood humans possessed in such measure. We're not all brave, Emma whispered. I was really scared. Fear does not negate courage, the Queen replied. Courage is acting despite fear. You came before me knowing I might order your death. That took bravery. Dr. Chen faced execution knowing it was certain. That took even more. The Queen straightened to her full height. I want you to remember something, Emma Patterson. Remember that today, 2 humans taught the Queen of the Xylothian Empire that her laws were incomplete. That her understanding was flawed. That mercy can be stronger than protocol. Not many adults can claim such an achievement. Certainly not many children. Emma wiped her eyes. I just wanted Dr. Chen to live. She saved me. And now both of you will live, the Queen said. Because some things matter more than treaties. Like ensuring that courage and kindness are rewarded rather than punished. The Queen gestured to a junior guard. Escort Miss Patterson back to the human colony. Personally. Ensure her safe arrival. Bring her family this message from me. Their daughter witnessed history today. They should be proud. The guard saluted and offered his limb to Emma. She took it, still looking back at the Queen with an expression of wonder mixed with lingering fear. Thank you, Emma said quietly. Thank you for not killing her. The Queen watched as the child was led away. Around her, the court remained still, waiting for the Queen to explain or justify or provide context for this unprecedented reversal. The Queen had no intention of doing any of those things. A Queen did not explain decisions to her court. A Queen made decisions and the court adapted. But privately, in the quiet space of her own thoughts, the Queen acknowledged the truth. She had witnessed something in Sarah's memories that challenged 3,000 years of Xylothian philosophy. The human hadn't saved Emma because of genetic imperative. Hadn't done it for political advantage. Hadn't done it to demonstrate dominance or secure resources or fulfill duty. Sarah Chin had saved Emma Patterson because she couldn't bear to watch a child die when she had the power to prevent it. That was all. That simple, irrational, beautifully human reason. The Xylothian Empire had conquered star systems with superior technology and ruthless efficiency. They had outlasted countless rival species through disciplined adherence to logical principles. They had built a civilization that spanned sectors and endured millennia. And not once, in all that history, had any Xylothian chosen to die for a stranger's child simply because it felt unbearable to do otherwise. The Queen returned to her throne and settled into its familiar contours. Her royal guard resumed their positions. The court began to disperse, members departing to spread word of this strange judgment throughout the empire. The Queen let them go. Let them whisper and speculate. Let them question and debate. She had just learned that humanity possessed something the Xylothian Empire had optimized out of its culture thousands of years ago. Call it compassion. Call it irrational altruism. Call it whatever clinical term made it easier to analyze. The Queen called it dangerous. Because any species that could produce individuals like Sarah Chin, people who would die for strangers without hesitation, was not a species to be dismissed or contained. It was a species that would either become the Empire's greatest ally or its most dangerous rival. And the Queen was old enough, wise enough, to know which outcome she preferred. 3 days later, Sarah woke up in a private medical suite with her neural pathways mostly healed and her future radically changed. Emma visited her daily, always accompanied by guards who had learned to let the child bring flowers from the human colony's greenhouse. The Queen summoned her once Sarah was deemed recovered enough for conversation. They talked for 6 hours. About humans. About Xylothians. About the treaty and its failures. About what happens when 2 species try to coexist without truly understanding each other's core values. At the end of that conversation, Sarah Chin became the first human to serve as an advisor to the Xylothian throne. She spent the next 5 years rewriting the treaty, negotiating new terms that acknowledged human irrationality as a feature rather than a flaw. And every year on the anniversary of her almost execution, the Queen sent her a message containing a single question. Was it worth it? Every year, Sarah sent the same reply. Yes. Because Emma Patterson grew up to become a doctor herself, inspired by the woman who had been willing to die for her. Because the revised treaty saved countless lives on both sides. Because sometimes the irrational choice, the human choice, was the only choice worth making. And because in a universe that often felt cold and logical and mercilessly efficient, there remained species who still believed that a single child's life mattered more than law, more than protocol, more than even their own survival. The Xylothian Empire learned that lesson from humanity. And they became stronger for it. 3/3